live fire on the streets of Caracas. Dramatic scenes as masked protesters faced off with pro-government troops. And armed military vehicles ploughed into crowds of opposition supporters. The actions came after opposition leader Juan Guaidó publicly called for a military uprising.
Así que es un momento muy importante para Venezuela.
It is a very important moment for Venezuela. We invite the world to witness what is going to happen here.
Juan Guaidó is backed by dozens of countries, including Australia, after sham elections last year. But the depth of his military support is still unclear. His envoy in Washington says he's patient.
If they arrest Juan Guaidó, the people of Venezuela will stay on the streets. So the majority of Venezuelans are looking for a change, and that change will come. They won't be able to stop it. I mean, in my view, Maduro is the past.
El llamado al pueblo de Venezuela es...
The call to the Venezuelan people is to remain calm and sensible. There is no situation that has put in danger the institutions nor the democracy at this moment.
The White House has wholeheartedly backed the move to overthrow Maduro, partly due to the impact of people fleeing to surrounding countries, but also because he's backed by China, Cuba and Russia. Moscow has already dispatched tactical advisors to Venezuela. The Trump administration believes Maduro was ready to flee the country as late as this morning, but the Russians talked him out of it. Venezuela says that's fake news.
I hope this is enough to tip Maduro out of power.
If it isn't, the US has left military intervention on the table. Zoe Daniel, ABC News, Washington.
Greg Palast is here. He's covered Venezuela for the BBC television and The Guardian to steal the Venezuelan elections. Now, so you have some very interesting... We've covered Venezuela extensively here at the show. So, like, for instance, well, they're not showing this kind of stuff, right? So this Abby Martin, how many Western news outlets showed the massive marches in Venezuela protesting the U.S.-backed coup today? I'm going to guess 0. So we also showed you... We also showed you a video from inside a Venezuelan supermarket that was Max Blumenthal exposing the lies that you can't get food in Venezuela. It's actually plentiful. Debunking CNN lies about Venezuela. So that was the Panama ambassador who was saying that Maduro was a mafia guy instead of exactly the opposite. It's Trump and Bolton and Abrams who are the mafia guys.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Our own president.
And we showed you even Bernie Sanders got caught repeating CIA talking points. You have to remember when, as George Galloway pointed out to me, that whenever the regime change war criminals want to launch an invasion, they first have to launch a narrative. They first have to get you to agree to the pretext of why they have to go in. And the pretext is always blank is a bad guy. He oppresses his own people. He gasses his own people. That's what they said about Saddam Hussein. That's what they said about Muammar Gaddafi. That's what they said about Assad. And that's what they're saying about Maduro. And so when you repeat, I think Maduro's a bad guy, but I don't think we should go in, what you're doing is you're actually affirming the CIA's pretext for a coup and an invasion and a regime change war. You're actually doing more damage than you're doing good. And that's what this was about Bernie Sanders. And it's not just him, it's every politician except for maybe Ilhan Omar. And it's every news journalist except for Max Blumenthal, Aramate, and here. So Jorge Ramos, we showed you him pushing for Venezuelan regime change, like the scummiest of any journalist I've ever seen in my life. He's the worst. Yes. And now Greg Palast is here. Now, Greg Palast is here to debunk all those guys because he's actually been to Venezuela. He's actually covered it. And he sent me this video today, and this is super interesting. Do you want to tell people what they're going to see?
Yeah, this is from the film The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and it begins with the XL Keystone Pipeline. And what does that have to do with Venezuela?
What does that have to do with Venezuela?
And what does that have to do with the Koch brothers? And now you're going to find out Koch brothers overthrowing the government of Venezuela and the XL pipeline and how they're connected. And then just that Agent Orange guy there while he was running for president.
Okay, here we go.
I want the Keystone Pipeline.
You should love the Keystone Pipeline.
Love the Keystone Pipeline. The Keystone XL pipeline will bring the world's filthiest oil, tar sands from Canada,
all the way across the belly of the United States, over our water resources, down to Texas.
Oil to Texas? Why in the world would you have to ship oil to Texas?
Why?
The answer is here in Corpus Christi, home of the Koch brothers' giant refinery.
But the Kochs have a problem. They can't use Texas oil. It's not filthy enough. It's not dirty enough for their refinery. They have to use super heavy crude, gunk, like you get from the tar sands.
So for years, the Kochs had to import their extra filthy crude from Caracas. And the price of that heavy oil was set by this man, the Frank Sinatra of Venezuela. Years ago, President Hugo Chavez told me, Venezuela, with the world's biggest reserve of oil, would really stick it to U.S. customers like the Kochs.
Do them.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, eye-popping stuff, right? Didn't know that he had to import stuff from Venezuela. Didn't know he had to import the dirty crude from Venezuela. Did not know that this had to do with the Koch brothers. Did not know that.
The Koch brothers are two of the richest people in the world. The brothers are worth $50 billion each after years of family feuds and massive lawsuits. To put that in perspective, Jeff Bezos is worth between $80 and $160 billion, depending upon how you measure it. So the Koch brothers are in the top 10 of richest people on earth, David and Charles Koch. And they use their wealth to influence our politics, including this whole thing down in Venezuela.
So that's great work.
Right. So what happens is, people don't know this. The Kochs have these giant refineries, some of the biggest in the United States and the world, on the Gulf Coast of Texas. They're in the middle of oil fields. They can't use Texas oil because it's literally not heavy and filthy enough. And so they have to take almost all their oil from Venezuela, the only place where you can get this super heavy oil. Normally, it's discounted. But because they know the Kochs have to use their oil, Chavez, who was a really bright man, was squeezing the Kochs by, the cojones there and charging them a premium for his oil. And the Kochs have been going crazy. They were losing money at their refinery because of the price. So you have two choices. You got to get the XL pipeline, and it's taken too long to get there. So first they had to get Trump to come in as president and announce and overcome all of the EPA's objection, everyone's objection, and get the XL.
This is following up on an executive order that the president signed back on January the 24th, setting in motion the process to approve the Keystone XL pipeline. Today will be the official go-ahead from the White House. We're expecting a number of executives, including those from TransCanada, which put out a statement this morning on this. Here's what they have said, and we'll hear from their CEO, we expect, at the event here at the White House today. They say, this is a significant milestone for Keystone XL project. We greatly appreciate President Trump's administration for reviewing and approving this important initiative.
The pipeline approved, still ain't there. So what do? You better overthrow the government of Venezuela with some guy named Juan Guaido, who has said, and I quote, I will open up the Venezuela oil fields to American companies, and in particular, and so you have to understand, Exxon was basically thrown out of Venezuela. They've had lawsuits going against Venezuela. Guaido says he will pay off Exxon, and he will let Exxon take control again of the Venezuelan oil fields. That's what this game is about. It's about the oil. And who is this guy Juan Guaido, by the way, that Trump has said is recognized as president, that declared himself president? Just so you know, he's not someone who said, oh, the election was stolen from me. He literally never ran for president.
I know.
He's this 35-year-old white guy, and that's really at the heart. That's the other thing that Trump likes. He speaks good English. He hung out with the right-wing think tanks in Washington, went to George Washington University. He's a rich guy. He's a white guy. That's really, really important. And in a black nation, in a mestizo, a nation which is made up of about 70% mestizos. That is, people who are, as Chavez told me, a combination of negro e indio, as he said, black and indigenous. That's the majority of the people in Venezuela, but they're finding a white guy to run it.
Yeah, all right, so we're going to get to that in just a second. Before we get to that, because that's a very interesting twist that no one else is reporting except you.
Yes.
And now we will also be reporting that. And so that's, again, very easy for us to be better than the every other journalist in the country and outside the country. So So we know this. We've told you this before, but to recap, it's more oil in reserve in Venezuela than in Saudi Arabia. In fact, twice as much oil in Venezuela as there is in Saudi Arabia. Yes, there is a threat of starvation, but because of the U.S. Euro right and Canadian embargo. So we've told you that sanctions that we've been the United States and the West have been imposing on Venezuela, that sanctions aren't there to bring democracy to the people. Sanctions are there to bring a country to its knees so we can overthrow their government, install a puppet, and steal their natural resources and give it to the United States corporations. Okay. So also the right-wing British government is refusing to give Venezuela $1.5 billion of its gold held in the UK.
By the way, I want to mention this.
Yeah.
This is very, very important about the UK.
Sure.
Here's when the right-wing Tory government seized Venezuela's gold. The gold is held in trust for Venezuela, just physically held in the exchequer in the basement of the Treasury in Britain. And they won't give Venezuela its $1.5 billion of gold. Why? Because the Venezuelan government refused to give British Petroleum the fields that had been run by the French company Total. France left Venezuela. The British government asked Venezuela to give those oil fields to British Petroleum, to BP. Venezuela said, screw you last year. Immediately after, they said, well, guess what? You don't give us your oil? We have your gold.
Wow.
How about that? That's what it's about. And it's not about, the British say, they want democracy. They didn't care about democracy.
Of course they don't care.
BP was going to get the oil.
Right.
But now suddenly they care about democracy. And I do want to emphasize, by the way, that President Maduro, who I've met, who came to visit me in my office in New York, and I've met the opposition leaders too, except for this guy Guaido that no one had ever heard of. And I got to tell you, he was elected president. You may not like him. I mean, a lot of people don't like Trump.
A lot of people don't. More people voted against Trump than voted for him, and he's our president. And that didn't happen in Venezuela.
And Maduro, they had a very close election, actually. It was hard fought. Maduro won by a small amount. It was hard fought. They have a very split government, and you have a National Assembly, which is split, but it's about still there's a majority of the government-supporting party. Jimmy Carter, who reviews elections worldwide, has previously said that Venezuela has the most honest election system he's seen anywhere in the world, and way more than in Georgia, where he's from.
Yeah.
I've reported about that theft in the midterms. They didn't have anything like that. Unlike, in Georgia, I discovered that they illegally removed a third of a million voters of color. They didn't do that in Venezuela, but now they want to replace the president of color of Venezuela with the white guy chosen by Donald Trump.